here are the 5 players we need to avoid in 2025 fantasy football drafts at all costs. The biggest trap is going to be at the end of the video, so make sure you do stick around for that. As we get into it, guys, make sure to hit that like button, show some support for this channel and for the video, and send some good luck to your fantasy football team this early in the year. But Javonte Williams is going to be our first guy. Now, he's not necessarily a guy that's going to sandbag your fantasy team and make you lose specifically because of him. He is the RB29. That's not necessarily a steep price, but that would put him in round 8 of fantasy drafts, and that's exactly where we find the guys like Puka Nacua, Bucky Irving, the fantasy guys that break out that we don't want to just throw a pick away on. Let's look at the straight facts here. He just has not been the same running back since his ACL injury in 2022. Since that, his efficiency metrics have dropped and never really bounced back. His missed tackles forced per attempt has dropped by 50%, all things inclusive. He only finished above the RB30 one time in his career, and that was his rookie season. He's gotten close a few, but not really. Now he goes to a Dallas team that is bottom 3 in rushing statistics here and opportunity in general. Last season, they were 24th in rushing attempts. They were 27th in yards and last in touchdowns scored at the running back position. Now, you can make the case here that there is less running back competition in Dallas, considering how much Sean Payton loved to use a committee backfield. There is a discrepancy there, but he also loves throwing the ball to his running backs. Since Sean Payton has become ahead of the Broncos, they've been top 5 in running back targets per game and season targets every single year. The Cowboys are nowhere near that. Their floor for the running backs is necessarily gone. They also bring in Miles Sanders over the offseason on a 1-year deal, drafted 5th round rookie Jaden Blue. Now, I will admit these aren't top competitors as far as running back talents, but reports show from camp that Javonte and Sanders are both splitting first team reps in training camp so far. That's to be expected. Jaden Blue, he has more of an uphill battle. He's RB3 right now behind those two guys. He's starting off on kick return for training. That's not too unexpected, but I do 100% believe that he will come up to be, at some point, a viable running back in fantasy football. So I guess that's another negative for Javonte Williams here. We just can't expect a world where Javonte Williams is a top 25 running back, outperforming his ADP that much to make him a good pick worth it in that round. But this might be a very strong take. So before you click off the video, hear me out. Jonathan Taylor. Whoa. I am more or less avoiding in the second round. Now, let me give you some context here. If we look at last season averages, 17.6 fantasy points per game, RB12. Not a bad season by any means. He's expected to be up there again this year, which is why he's being drafted so early, especially considering the product that the Colts were last season. They finished below 500, multiple quarterbacks being thrown out in that offense. You'd think the season could get better this year. Well, JT's points aren't necessarily parallel to what we're seeing, because almost 40% of his fantasy football points from last season came from 3 games, from week 16 through 18. You can argue maybe those teams weren't really trying as much. You look at the teams that he was playing, he scored 6 touchdowns and 95 touches in those 3-week stretches of games, all against top 10 run defenses and allowing fantasy points to the running back position. Now, you can isolate these and say, okay, well, he's doing good against bad run defenses. Every running back is going to be able to do that and take advantage of those matchups. He's already a workhorse running back. Nothing's really changed in this offense to make him jump in drafts because of it. His opportunity share has spiked in those weeks, likely due to, again, the end of season game scripts. We can't expect him to average 32 carries a game like he did in that 3-week stretch. And we have to take into account that Jonathan Taylor just does not catch passes. And that's the one thing that will always kill his upside. Last season, he was the RB42 in targets per game. He never finished above top 20 in his career. Then you look at the quarterback situation. Anthony Richardson, he's not a check down quarterback. We know this. His rushing style is to just run instead of throwing checkdowns. Most rushing quarterbacks do that. And then we have the argument of if Daniel Jones starts, which is honestly very, very possible. He isn't necessarily a check down merchant thrower either. But the argument here is that it does not matter what quarterback the Colts throw out. They still just don't throw to the running back as far as their offensive scheme. Collectively last season, with all the quarterbacks that started, they were 29th in passing attempts to that position. Now they bring in Taysom Hill 2.0 and Tyler Warren, draft DJ Giddens in the 5th round. All of this to me does not equate to an RB9 price in the second round in fantasy football. That to me seems like we're drafting him near his peak and he can't really excel that far out of that. In my opinion, in the second round, let's grab a guy that we know has the potential to finish as a RB1, 2, or 3. I don't think that's Jonathan Taylor. But if you are gaining value from these statistics and the information that I'm giving you in this video, I recommend you to try WalterPicks for yourself. This is where I got all of the data from in this video. You guys can sync your draft, you can sync your league. It'll give you advice all season long about start-sit decisions. It'll help you find trades in your league that actually make sense. Go ahead and check it out. It's very early still in the season. Use code Avery. You guys can look at all of that for free. But another must avoid here is going to be Devonta Smith for a similar reason of JT, and the fact that I don't see a world where he can exceedingly outperform his ADP. So let's get into it here. First things first, the Eagles just do not want to throw the ball. We have to establish that as a known fact. That puts them at a huge disadvantage. The team is bottom 3 in passing attempts per game. That's been true since Jalen Hurts became the starter full-time for the Eagles in 2021. And guess what? Since Saquon came to Philly last season, they were dead last in passing attempts at only 25 attempts a game. That is already an insanely low sample size. Joe Burrow himself was passing 40 plus times a game. That's almost double the offensive opportunity for fantasy football. So you account for that fact and you look at quarterbacks, they only complete an average of about 60 to 70% of their passes per game. That leaves a team with 17 total completions. We already know at least 3 are going to Saquon from the checkdowns. The point here is his ceiling is always going to be capped because of the passing volume and the fact that he's the wide receiver 2 on his team. Now, he's being drafted as the wide receiver 21. He finished as a wide receiver 23 last year, and that was despite A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert both being injured for part of the season. It gave him more opportunity, you could argue, while considering he's not even the wide receiver 1 on his team. A.J. Brown is going to be the main target getter, and their defense is number 1 in the NFL, which means they're never down in games. So they're never going to have insanely high passing scripts. A wide receiver 21 price in round 3 just seems a little bit too steep, where again, we could be getting guys that can finish top 5, top 10 in wide receiver rankings. I just don't see Devonta Smith outperforming his ADP enough to get us that value back in that round. But we can't have a must-avoid video if we don't talk about the quarterbacks. I'll continue to say this. Avoid Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people aren't going to like this because he has his weapons. They're healthy. He probably could bounce back. But if we're being completely honest with ourselves, his name value is forcing his ADP up to where it is right now. Over the last 2 seasons, he finished as the quarterback 10 and the quarterback 11, despite being drafted top 5 every single year. When you have guys like Josh Allen, when you have guys like Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, they can afford to be a significantly worse quarterback in real life, but consistently outperform the guys like Patrick Mahomes because of the rushing floor that they have in their game. Now, it doesn't make sense to reach on a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who needs to finish with at least 40 passing touchdowns a year to reach that ADP. He's being drafted at the quarterback 6 right now. He's always going to finish somewhere around there, but it's not quite an upside play when you have to use a 4th round pick on him to get that. The opportunity cost for me just does not make sense. I'd rather draft quarterbacks rounds later that have about the same upside and probably same finish, like Baker Mayfield, who had an amazing season last year, Kyler Murray, even Jared Goff, if you trust him without Ben Johnson. I have a full video on the must-have sleepers. The top 1% of fantasy football players and analysts aren't telling you, they're gatekeeping this. If you guys want to see that video, just let me know in the comments and I will release it next week. Another one of those breakout running backs I am pumping the brakes on is Tyrone Tracy for a few reasons here. He's getting drafted ahead of his counterpart of Cam Scatterboo as the RB36, which I'll get into in a second in round 10. You won't necessarily lose a ton of value on him, but these are rounds where, again, we're going to find legitimate breakout guys. So let's break down why he's a trap here. When we look at him as a player, when he became the starter in week 5, he was super efficient, averaging 5 yards per carry. He scored a few touchdowns. He was catching passes. But after that bye week, from weeks 12 through 18, he completely fell off a cliff in that aspect. He was PFF's 4th lowest grade running back in the NFL. He was splitting carries inside the 5 with Devin Singletary. He had insane ball security issues. He had the 3rd most fumbles out of all running backs in that stretch, and he only started being a starting running back in week 13. He was showing real regression. Then over the offseason, we see a lot of news coming from the Giants coaching staff and just team in general saying they're doing a lot of homework on running backs. That turned out to be true. Again, they went out and drafted Cam Scatterboo in the 4th round in the draft this season. The question then becomes, how many fumbles is it really going to take for Brian Daboll to just give up, I guess, on Tyrone Tracy and push him down the depth chart for Cam Scatterboo, for Devin Singletary? He's still on the team. It's not like the Giants are in paradise. Brian Daboll is more or less at a risk of losing his job if things don't turn out for him. That's likely why they drafted a rookie in Jackson Dart, to kind of latch themselves to a young quarterback to give the coaching staff a bit more time to be employed. The Giants, their schedule is 100% brutal this year. I could see a world where Tyrone Tracy just does not turn out. He's not being super efficient. They test out a rookie running back. Cam Scatterboo is good, and that's the end of Tyrone Tracy as the RB36. Now, his leash, it seems extremely short with the leeway that they're giving him this year, especially considering, again, that they drafted another rookie running back. But that is going to finish this video. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one coming very soon.